I'm making these brief remarks on behalf of my boss, Professor Etienne Hile, who could not be with us today because of other pressing issues. So he sends his regards and he wishes us well during the deliberations. Thank you again, and you are most welcome. I can see quite a number of people are still joining. I expect that we will have a full house.
Briefly, we are privileged to have Dr. Oluwaseun David ADEPOJU. I hope I got the name right. He is one of our very own academic who is very, very excellent in the areas of academic libraries and has done a lot of work in the university as well, and specifically African Leadership University based in Rwanda. So he's a research methods faculty and academic librarian, and he is with the African Leadership University, and that is the brief information that I want to give throughout his presentation. He will tell us more about what he's been able to do throughout the COVID period and what he does in the university. If you can hear me, Doc, you are highly welcome to this special webinar, and we are ready to tap into your knowledge and expertise as well. Kindly enable your microphone and have the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me clearly.
Your voice is audible.
All right, awesome. It's my greatest pleasure to be here this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are connecting from. And I want to quickly appreciate the Association of African Universities and AFLIA for putting this kind of conversation together at this very critical time. I want to welcome all of you. My name is Oluwaseun David ADEPOJU, as rightly said. I'm a research methods faculty, and I'm the academic librarian at the African Leadership University in Kigali, Rwanda. I know you will agree with me that we are going through a very difficult time globally with this pandemic, and I hope that we are all keeping well and keeping safe wherever we are. And it's been very challenging for professionals and academics alike all over the world. We are always praying that history should not repeat itself, but it seems that saying, we need to change it in a way, because history is repeating itself again with this lockdown and pandemic. And you will agree with me that from the early 1800s, the world has faced different types of pandemics that has brought about a total shutdown of the global economy, and it has affected every part of the society. So history is repeating itself, because any history that does not show itself again is not giving itself the opportunity to be changed or the opportunity to be disrupted. So history is repeating itself, but we hope that whenever history repeats itself, we are next prepared. We are prepared for history that is repeating itself. So this is the foundation of my conversation today. I'm not going to give a very long conversation. Okay, can you hear me clearly? I can see that some people cannot hear me.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yes,
So
I think
I'll
it's
start
clear.
my conversation today. All right. Thank you. So I'll start my conversation today by asking us this particular question. And as librarians, as many librarians that are on the call, my first question to us this morning is, were you trained to be an emergency librarian or crisis librarian? And now this is a very dear question to my heart, because when we look at history very well, during the World War I and World War II, librarians were very instrumental in those wars, which means that librarians are not just people that work with people in universities or in their communities. We are also armed forces of knowledge. And when you look at it very well, during the World War I and World War II, librarians were sent to the battlefront as well. And their major role during the World War I and World War II they were designated to be information hunters for strategies for the military and for policy for the government. So if we understand where we are coming from as professionals, I guess we'll be able to channel the future that we want for ourselves as librarians. We were held in high esteem by the government, by the community that we serve, even from the past. And I'm talking about from 1920s to 1942, 1946, we were regarded as people that has a particular weapon. But our weapon is not gun. Our weapon is not spear. Our weapon is knowledge. And you will agree with me that knowledge is a weapon that is very, very instrumental to even teaching people how to use guns. So the roles of librarians during World War I and World War II, the time we can call a time of crisis, a time of war, is to, they were information hunters. They knew the right set of information to give to the people fighting the war and the right set of information to give to the government to strategize and to make policies to win the war. And especially in the US, there were many articles online that talked about the fact that America sent librarians to war. And this was a very critical time for America in getting intelligent information. And librarians were given the opportunity to be relied upon by the government and by policymakers to give them the right information they need to strategize to win the war. And the librarians that went to war also knew the right set of information and books in itself to give to the people at home who are expecting the people who have gone to work to come back. So these books they gave to them helped them to actually, to stop anticipating bad news from the war front. And the kinds of books they gave to people who were fighting the war were the kind of books that encouraged them, that gave them courage for them to push on and to help them to re-strategize whenever the enemy is catching up on them. So as librarians, we were coming from somewhere. We were at a particular point, and the kind of trainings and education we got from our different library schools might not have taught us how to be academic emergency librarians or academic crisis librarians. We are not just librarians when everything is smooth. We are not just librarians when there is internet infrastructure, when there's a good space for us to operate. We are also librarians in hard times. We are librarians in any kind of situation that we find ourselves. And a very interesting author by the name of Boyd Rayward, he did a collaborative publication with Christine Jenkins in the early 60s. And the title of the book is Libraries in Times of War, Revolution and Social Change. Libraries have been known to be very instrumental in hard times globally. So if I connect that back to what I said initially, history is repeating itself. And we may not be able to stop the repeat of history, but all we can do is to prepare for history and change the course of history. So we might not be able to say that COVID-19 will be the last pandemic we are going to experience globally. But the truth is, what we make out of this pandemic will go a long way in channeling the future that we want, and it's going to go a long way in disrupting history. If history has not repeated itself, most countries now will not be talking about digital inclusion because students are home now, and most countries have not even opened up for students to resume. If history has not repeated itself, we will not be on this webinar this morning trying to have conversations around how we can help our communities better remotely. Do we take the opportunity of this crisis to understand what the current situation is globally and what the future looks like. So may history repeat itself. But when history repeats itself, we are saying that we should be ready to disrupt history when it repeats itself. Right? So libraries are very instrumental in times of war, in times of crisis, in terms of revolution and social change. And I hope that as we go ahead in this conversation, We will discover those things that we're supposed to do as information professionals, and more importantly, as information hunters. You would agree with me that from the beginning of this pandemic and the lockdown in different countries of the world till now, we have received several misinformation, or I would rather say infodemics about this pandemic. And it is the role of librarians like me and you and academics like me and you to dig out the truth and share the truth. People have been misled because of all kinds of misinformation that is going on online. And in World War I and World War II, we saw that librarians were there as information hunters to gather information, to give an advantage to their different countries in strategizing for the war. And what we are going through now is more or less like an healthcare war. And librarians are supposed to be the gatekeepers of knowledge and right information. And I'm very glad with what AFLIA did on their website at the beginning of this pandemic to show librarians the credible sources of information that they can divulge to people. And if you look at it very well, because the information is now in our pocket, on our mobile phones, we receive all sorts of fallacious information about this pandemic every day on our WhatsApp, on our Telegrams, in the different groups we belong to online. And it breaks my heart that we, the librarians that are supposed to dig out the truth and publish the truth unapologetically, we are doing our best, but our best is not enough. And this is a wake-up call for us to be publishers of truth. We are not just librarians. We have a weapon. We are a military force for knowledge and information, and our weapon is knowledge. And whatever we can use knowledge to do, we change every other thing, right? So our weapon is knowledge, and I believe we should use it very well. So in a nutshell, on this slide, all I'm trying to say is that librarians have always been useful and relevant in hard times, in times of war, in times of revolution, and in times of social change. And this is what we are experiencing with this pandemic, and I hope that we are taking opportunities of this time to use our weapon, which is knowledge. We should know the time to move from information provision. We are called information providers. But this is the time we should move into information diagnosis. We are like medical doctors. We should know the right set of medications we should give to our patients. And in this case, library users, right? The type of users we have changed because this pandemic has changed a lot of narratives. So now it is time for us to move from information, just from information provision to information diagnosis. We should be able to know the right set of information about this pandemic, about the future of work, about the future of education to our students and to the faculty and to the general academic community that we serve. Now, I have a good news for us. And the good news is that the physical libraries are locked, but knowledge is not locked. And that's the good news. Personally, I've been working from home in the last 2 months. The university is closed. The physical library is closed. But knowledge is not locked. We cannot lock knowledge. And this is the good news for us as librarians. Our physical library is locked, where we provide information to our users. And for many academic libraries that have not moved fully online, this is the time, to now bring out the knowledge that we cannot see physically in managing the library and to decipher what your users and your academic community needs, right? So that's a very good news, and this will give us hope. Now, the pandemic, in this pandemic for academic librarians, and in this place, I want to slow down a little to talk about the advantages of crisis. Yes, the world is experiencing a lot of issues at the moment. Economies are getting shut down. People are losing their jobs. Our children are at home. They can't go to school. But the truth is there's in every crisis, there's an opportunity. And there's something called good crisis. So I put this quote here. never let a good crisis go to waste. We must be conscious of the fact that as we are experiencing the bad part of this pandemic, we also have the good part that we have to explore. And we should not allow this crisis to go to waste. Now, what are your plans in this pandemic for your academic library? What are your plans? This is the time, we've always given an excuse that we do not have enough time to do the things we want to do. Now we have the time. Now we have the time. Those online infrastructures you've abandoned for a long time to build for your academic library, this is the right time to work on it, because this will pass and will not be under lockdown forever, right? Those content you want to push out to give your library more visibility and to give the right set of information to the community you serve and to the general public. This is the time to work on those structures. Those publications you are supposed to make to report a research you have done that can help shape the information architecture of the global academic community. This is the time to work on it. So the time we've always said we wanted, we have it in abundance now. Many of us, we work from home. Many of us, we are not even working from home at all, but at least we are keeping in touch with our team members. But now is the time to work on those things that we have abandoned and those things that we had always given an excuse of not having time to do. Personally, from the beginning of this pandemic, there were some data, I'd collected some data for 3 types of research that I've done in the past, and I've not had time to actually work on them. Between the time the lockdown started in Rwanda and now, I've completed those 3 collaborative research papers, and one of them just got accepted a few days ago in just the space of 2 months, right? And many of us, we have the plans to start a YouTube channel to connect with our community very well. We plan to build the web app. We plan to do some online digitization projects. And this is the time to actually implement those projects. And the truth is, this is the time to bring your negotiation skills to work, because there's a story to tell. So all those virtual remote access for academic resources that you've always postponed, many organizations and publishers and journal platforms are actually giving free access to universities from all around the world. And this is the best time to do that bargain. This is the best time. There's a story to tell now. In the academic circle, as we speak, the pandemic narrative and story is pushing a lot of boundaries for us to have open doors into places we've not been able to enter before. In the last 2 weeks, I've been in a conversation with MIT Press to give my university at least some access to all their resources for a while before the pandemic is over. And I'm very glad that 2 days ago, MIT Press gave my university an access, and I was made the admin for my university. So all the things on MIT Press, books, journals, audio resources, video resources, my university can have access to it because of negotiation. So it is the best time for us to bring our negotiation skills to bear. We have a story to tell now. This is the time to prove our point to our community again that we are ever relevant and that we are there for them at all times. So we must have a plan. We must not, for example, in my country, universities and schools are resuming in September. That is the tentative date that has been fixed. But there's a lot of things to do between now and September, personally. And I know this is the case in different countries as well. We must be deliberate in drawing a framework of plans and projects we want to execute, projects that we can do online without being present physically in our different facilities and in our different universities, right? So that YouTube channel, go and open it now. This is the time, because we have the attention of our students, we have the attention of our community as we speak. That research publication that will help us generally, some research you have done, this is the time to write it up and publish. Let us see it. Let the world benefit from your wealth of experience and knowledge, right? That channel you want to start to debunk all infodemics. this is the time to do that, right? So we must have a plan. This is a pandemic, yes, but we must also have a plandemic, as I put on the slide here. We must have a plandemic for this pandemic, right? As academic librarians. So don't let us waste this good crisis. The good part of this crisis is for us to be able to implement some of the things we've always wanted to do, but because we lack enough time to do them, this is the right time to do that. Now, may we not waste this attention. Globally, people seem to have more time. If you use Instagram very well, you see all our celebrities, entertainers, people are going live on Instagram to connect with their audience every day. People are using Zoom to connect to their audience every day. So people have some time now to give if there's a value for us to give to them. So now that we have the attention of our students, we have the attention of our faculty members, we have the attention of the community we serve, what are we doing, not to waste this attention that we are getting from them, right? So number one, we need to go to where our users are. We need to go to where our users are. And generally, university undergraduates, for we academic librarians, we serve undergraduates, we serve postgraduates, we serve all levels of education and at the tertiary level. Now, most of our undergraduates are on Instagram every day, doing all sorts of challenge, brush challenge, a whole lot of challenge, just to, keep themselves happy and busy at home. What if we go there as librarians? Well, let's go to where they are. They are engaging on Twitter, they are engaging on Instagram, they are on TikTok, they are using social media generally. Our students, our undergraduates. As librarians, during this lockdown, we must go to where our users are. And those are the platforms where our users have been engaging. And we must be able to go there. It is very important. It is very, very important. So we must go to where our users are. If you can do it, do an Instagram live session where you talk about books. Do an Instagram live session where you, do a competition for people to read a book, and then they give a summary of the book, and you give prizes to them in the name of your academic library. What of if we go on organize a lot of webinars to connect with our students on Zoom? Everybody is online now. That's the truth, because the internet is no longer a luxury, and I'm going to get to that point where we break that down and what it means for Africa generally, right? So number one, we must go to where our users are. And where are they? They are on the many social media platforms. And we must be deliberate as academic librarians, as professionals, to go where they are. One mistake that we have been making in the academic profession or in the librarianship profession is that we don't do customer journey mapping like the people in the business world, like they do. We don't do customer journey mapping, and it is very important. Our users are our customers, and we must understand their needs as the society changes. Now, the needs of our users are different now. They are not in our different physical facilities that we built for them. The academic libraries, the reading rooms, they are not there. They are in their different sitting rooms and bedrooms at home. They are in the comfort of their homes. The first thing I did at the beginning of this lockdown is to send a survey to all the students and faculty in my university to understand the kind of support they need. Because I don't want to be using the drug for the medicine for headache, for stomach ache. We make that mistake a lot as librarians because we think the information that we have to give to these people or the channel we are using to give to these people is the same we need to use for this set of people. No. We must be deliberate about selective dissemination of information at this point in time. In understanding what our users need at this time as they are at home, we must, get their opinion on what exactly they want. So we must be doing customers journey mapping, and I hope we can do another webinar in the future where I can break down how we can do customers journey mapping, and in this case, users journey mapping for academic libraries to understand, the kind of needs of the different communities that we serve, right? So we must do that so that we can go to where our users are. They will like me, academic that I lead, to connect with them where they are. And that is on the different social media platforms they are using. And with that, we've been able to develop a mobile platform called My 2 Cents. And what we do on this platform is to ask people in our community to read a particular book every 2 weeks. And then we come together and we ask questions and do a challenge where people win, prizes and gifts for doing that. So while the lockdown is going, we are pushing knowledge to them. We are encouraging them to read, and we are incentivizing that so that we can encourage them to read. So we can also do that. Now is the time for us to also do data for learning challenge. We can do that on Instagram, on Twitter, where we push questions about a particular book or about a particular ideology that we're trying to push to the people. And we allow our students to engage with it and do it in a competitive way. And we give them data because many of them are learning at home. We can do internet subscription as a gift for them. Those are the ways businesses are engaging with their customers in this lockdown. And we must not be left out. We are like a business venture as well. We have customers, and those are the users and the faculties that we serve in our different universities. So it is important for us to go where our users are. Number 2, we must do what our users want. If we must remain relevant, if we must be useful during this lockdown to our users, we must be doing what our users want. And this connects to the first thing I said around knowing what our users want and doing what they want, right? And then number 3, we must speak the language of our users. We must speak the language of our users. The reason why a lot of people in the business world are getting a lot of following and gaining more relevance and importance at this time is because they speak the language of their customers. So we also must speak the language of our users. We must not just use general language in relating to or a general framework or a general approach in relating with our community. We must be able to speak the language of our users. I have a screenshot here by Ghetto Center Library. This was published around 1942 to 1945. And this spoke to during the war, where it was testified that people were literally studying for any kind of reading. Now, people are doing different challenge where with social media. Why not do the same as librarians? Why not do the same as librarians? We must go to where our users are. We must do what they want. And as a matter of fact, the weapon we have, we should use it very well as librarians. So this was during the World War II. It was testified that people were literally starving for any kind of thing to read. The misnomer and the misconception by librarians sometimes is that people don't want to read in Africa. But people read if we present it to them in an interesting way. And these are the things we should begin to rethink as librarians, because the future of education is changing, and it seems the four wall of a university or the four wall of a library might begin to lose relevance because everything is moving online. This pandemic has taught us a lot of things, and it has showed us what the future might look like. So we must be able to adapt, adopt and adapt to the new normal, right? I'm sure many of us are hoping that after this pandemic, we all want to go back to work and go back to our normal life. But for me, I don't think we should look for going back to our normal life, but going back to a better life, a better structure, a better infrastructure, a better plan, a better framework to serve our communities better. And that is why we must use this lockdown to connect to our communities better and listen to them well. Right? So the summary of this slide, is that we should go where our users are. If they're on social media, chase them to the place and meet them there. Doing what they want. If they want you to do data for learning challenge, where you give them data as an exchange for a book they've read and they've summarized in a competitive way, do it. that is how we can gain our relevance and keep maintaining the vitality of being a librarian, of being an information hunter, of being a knowledge manager, right? And then we must speak the language of our users. Now, I'll break down what our professional roles should be in this pandemic. I want to explain to us 2 roles that we need to play as academics, as librarians during this pandemic, and that is our professional roles and our policy. 1, we should create a remote access and log into resources for the academic communities we serve. Personally, my university, we subscribe to ESCO host, and we do not have remote access until the beginning of the pandemic. So I had to liaise with ESCO host to give us remote access so that our students can actually log in into ESCO host from their different homes. And that was the first thing I did. And I was also able to negotiate with more than 10 platforms, both in Africa, in the US, and Central Europe, to give us access to their university, like a temporary library consortium, whereby we increase the number of resources and options available to our faculty and students. Many of our faculty members are designing the new courses they are teaching in the new academic year in September, and we are responsible for helping them to build a robust curriculum. We are not there with them physically; they are not with us physically. We are in our different homes, but we must ensure that we are in their faces all the time. We are in their thoughts. We are in their mind all the time. Before they look left and right, they've seen the impact of the library. So we must be deliberate in helping our libraries to have access to remote access of resources. And there are a lot of open access platforms now that we can tap into. If you want to get the list of that, you can go on AFLIA website. There is enough that you can have access to there. Now, number 2, we should do a quick pivot into integrating 24/7 library chatbots on the library website or on an independent platform. This is the time for us to engage in both synchronous and asynchronous communication with our community. Now, many libraries don't have, in fact, this is the time for us to beef up our reference. For reference librarians on this platform, on this call, I'm challenging you to innovate. This is the time for you to be able to connect with your users 24/7. And it's not a very big thing to do. All you need to do is to connect with those who are software developers, and it's not expensive. Your library can afford to do it if you have the budget. Develop a chatbot whereby students and faculty who need a particular information or resource from you can drop the information on the chatbot, and the chatbot actually responds to them, to the level of understanding and machine feeding of that chatbot. But anything the chatbot cannot do, when you wake up the following morning, at least the chatbot has been able to give a temporary solution to the user, and then when you wake up, you can finalize the plan. This gives the community you serve the confidence that even if they wake up by 1 a.m. to write an assignment or a paper, the library is there for them. The library is there for them at 3 a.m. for 12 midnight. They will resources they need for their paper, for the paper they are writing, for the assignment they are writing. So we must do that. We must do that. It gives us a lot of relevance to the community that we serve. Number 3, this is the best time to enter into temporary library consortiums with other universities to facilitate robust access to resources for your community. I think this connects to the number 1 point that I talked about. Number 4, do more selective dissemination of information for universities that switched online during the pandemic. My university, for example, moved fully online. We are fully online at the moment. And then as the library, as the person in charge of the library, I was able to use all the library assistants and the interns working for the library to quickly, develop a new framework for serving people online. It is a different thing to serve people offline, and it's a different ballgame to serve people online. So we must be ready and be quick to pivot quickly into moving online. For universities that are moving fully online, it is your responsibility as the academic librarian or the information manager of that university to develop a framework for you to serve your community better online. So this is very important, right? You must be able to do selective dissemination of information. For example, when we board a plane, in a plane there's first class session, there's business class, and there's the economy, right? And all these things are there because there are the people entering first class needs a different types of service. The people in business class needs a different kind of service. The people in economy needs a different kinds of service. We must be able to meet all our users at their various points of needs. The society we live in is structured in class originally, and we must be able to step up our game to meet the different classes of people that we are serving. You must step up to the class of the students, undergraduate. You must step up to the class of the postgraduate students. And when I mean postgraduate, the master's students need something different from PhD students. You must be able to step up and meet them midway to be able to serve them better. You can't use the same structure you are using for undergraduate, for master's, and for PhD. They need different classes of information, and you must be able to provide that as an information manager, right? So, number 5, launch an interactive platform for students and members of the faculty to share what they are reading during this lockdown. This keeps the academic community engaged. I've talked about this. In my university, we developed a platform called 2 cents. And I didn't spend a dime out of the library budget to do that. An intern in the library who is a computer science student actually developed it as part of his contribution to the library. And the community is using the platform to engage. So we post books that people can read from time to time, and we engage them on that platform. And we keep our communities together, and we, relate together on that platform. So the library we've removed the library from the physical location in Kigali, and we have taken the library to the different homes of our community members in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Togo, in Benin Republic, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Sierra Leone. The library in Kigali is in their different sitting rooms because we've been able to do something that keeps them engaged. We must not be attached to our physical relevance. We must now move on to virtual relevance because of our roles as academic librarians, right? Number 6, start data for learning, reading, or blogging challenge that rewards students with internet data to keep learning at home. So whatever challenge you want to create or a competition to just keep the students engaging with our different libraries must reward them with something that is relevant to the times that we have. Now, most students are learning online. Internet data is expensive in most countries, and this is a big reality for us, right? So it is very important for us to, when we're doing any competition during this lockdown, we must reward them with data, internet data, that helps them to keep learning from home and to keep engaging with the community. Number 7, this is the best time for resources lobbying and negotiation from partners such as telcos to grant data subscription access for the academic communities to keep learning at home. Now, we have a story to tell, as I've said. Many universities are moving online, fully online, and we need data. When we moved online in my university, we had some challenges with students complaining about internet data, poor internet connectivity, signal attenuation, and in some countries where there's no electricity. But we did not allow that to debar us. My university actually bought internet data for all the students to finish this semester because we wouldn't want to carry over this semester. So the university took it upon itself, and with the help of the library, to subscribe internet data for all our students in their different countries. We made use of local telecommunication companies to and the mobile phone numbers of our students, to keep giving them internet data, at least 2 gig every month, for them to engage in their different online classrooms, right? And this is something that we can also do in our different universities. We should negotiate with telecommunication companies to give us at least, even if it's just 100 gig of data that we can share with our students for them to keep learning and engaging at home. We are, like I've said, we are no longer just information providers. We are information negotiators. We are information hunters. We are more than what our appellation generally says, right? We should go beyond what we are being used to and create new opportunities, for ourselves. Now we must be emergency academic librarians, crisis academic librarians, even this pandemic academic librarians. We are building solutions to help our community sail through this difficult time. So you must be able to do that. Liaise with telecommunication companies, at least to negotiate internet data for the academic community that you serve. Is a good responsibility for the library. Now, our policy roles in this pandemic as academic librarians, right? Now there's social distancing, and we expect that with social distancing, people will have internet and digital infrastructures to connect us. But the truth is, with social distancing, we are still experiencing digital distancing. And it is very, very, very heartbreaking. In this social distancing where we are not together physically, we expect that internet should not be a luxury in Africa. But the truth is, internet is still a luxury in many parts of Africa. And this particular slide is calling us to action as librarians to, be a policy advocate for digital inclusion in Africa. For digital inclusion in Africa. It is our responsibility. We cannot serve our communities better during this lockdown if our communities don't have access to internet in their different locations, right? It is becoming obvious now that internet data is the new oil, like we have always said, and this pandemic has showed us and confirmed that again, that data is the new oil, and internet data is the new fuel on which this future that we are looking at will run. Without internet, we will not be able to connect. If I've met anybody here, maybe just one person, but internet is enabling us to have this conversation. I'm seated in my room in Kigali, and I'm connecting with people from all around Africa and even India, right? So it is very important that we become advocates of digital inclusion. We will not be able to serve our community better, right? If our communities in their different places do not have internet, right? We should, our policy role, we should come together as a country to, right, third or second digital decade in Africa. And it is very sad that in Africa, as we speak, internet is still a luxury. Most university students cannot even afford to buy 1 gig of data to engage online, right? So it is our responsibility. Apart from our roles as academic librarians, we have the policy responsibility to advocate for digital inclusion. It's something I'm really passionate about, and it's something I do every day. Every opportunity I have to push a policy conversation on digital inclusion, I do that so that we can help our communities better and also catch up with current trends globally. The future is digital, and we cannot afford to be late. The future is digital. We cannot afford to be late, right? So we have the role and the responsibility that as social distancing is the norm now, we should have digital inclusion to help us bridge the gap. The future is digital. We cannot afford to be late. Africa is late. We are late. We were having issues with some of our students, in their different locations because they cannot afford to buy internet. It is expensive. It is very expensive. The parents that is trying to put food on the table will not be thinking of internet to buy for 5 children who are university students, right? So it is our role and responsibility to advocate for digital inclusion to help our communities better. So librarians in pajamas, and this is very funny. And I wrote here that your presence is no longer your face, but your digital imprint. Our presence now is no longer seeing each other physically, but our digital imprint. If you need something from me and you cannot see me physically, can you go on a platform and you see all that you need from me? Yes, it is possible. Now, many of us personally have been teaching all my classes from home. I teach research apart from my role as a librarian, So I've been teaching all my classes online, and most times I'm not even, I've not even taken my bath in the morning by the time I'm teaching my first class of the day. And that showed me that the future of education and learning and connecting with education and knowledge is really changing. Sometimes I'm in my pajamas by 4 p.m. in the afternoon and I'm still teaching and having office hour with students online, right? So it is very, 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 very important for us to know that our relevance is no longer our face, is no longer our physical presence, but our digital imprint. What are those things that we need? The skills we need to take charge of the changing working environment, the changing global education landscape. What are the skills we need? We need communication skills. We must be able to communicate with our community better. And the truth is, you have not communicated until you have communicated. Any speech you have given or any conversation you have had without the other person understanding it is not a communication. So we must learn communication skills, because sometimes when we are not physical in our communication, we are not with the person we are speaking with, sometimes the information can be distorted. And it will require an advanced communication skills to be able to communicate objectively, correctly, understandably with our community. So we need communication skills during this lockdown, and moving forward, we need communication skills to connect with our communities better. Number 2, we need information retrieval skills. And we cannot overemphasize this. Our first role as librarian is even information retrieval. And we're not talking about the old cataloging systems and classification. I'm talking about web crawling. We need to step up our games if we are going to be relevant in the changing working architecture and in the future of education that we are moving into. The old cataloging and classification skills will not help us in getting anywhere. Some students right now, like this morning, I've answered more than 10 emails from students that need a particular, they are global challenges students, and they need a particular information that the normal physical library that we have cannot help me. And I've been able to reach out to networks, and different platforms that I belong to get this information for the students. So information retrieval is no longer just Googling. Information retrieval is not just using the card catalog to retrieve things for students. We are talking about using your networks, information grabbing, to get what the students and the community needs for them. You can be the most celebrated staff member in your university as an academic librarian, because every information need of those your community members depends on you. And when they are looking for information, before they go to Google, they will say, go to our academic librarian. In 2 minutes, he or she will find what you're looking for. That is the relevance that we want for academic librarians in the 21st century and moving forward. So information retrieval skills, invest in it. Many of us didn't learn information retrieval skills for the 21st century in the different library schools we went to. We need personal and deliberate personal development to get these skills. Some of these skills are not taught in the normal degree program. You might have even done a PhD in information science, and you have not learned the basic things you need for information retrievers to serve your community better, right? So you must invest in it personally, to get the needed information retrieval skills for the 21st century. So as librarians in pajamas, we must be deliberate to get these skills. Now, we need design skills. Many of us we lack the skills and the basic knowledge of creating, visual communication to serve our community, right? And we must learn it. If you can, just learn. You don't need an advanced skill of design to be able to connect with your community. We need design skills. We need it. If we must create a visual communication system, that connects with your community better, you need design skills. And it's not a lot of investment to get to these skills. You only need determination to invest into these skills for yourself. We need database management skills, and we cannot overemphasize this. As a librarian, you cannot do without database management skills. You cannot do without it. It's the future. It's the future. We cannot do without it. We cannot do without it. So you must be able to do that. Then multitasking skills. Multitasking skills. Now that we are working online, we may be overwhelmed from the different information requests coming from our academic community. It is not the time to go and rest as academic librarians because, there's lockdown, so we are not working. It's the time for you to get into the heart of the community you serve, right? So we must learn how to multitask. As I'm speaking with you, messages are coming in from students, from the dean of faculty, requesting from different things. And as I'm speaking, I'm able to even brainstorm on some of the things I would do immediately I dropped this call. We must be able to multitask. We need it. We need it. We need it very well. For me, I teach, I'm in the classroom, but I also manage the university library. And I can say that I enjoy doing the two. So as librarians, we are not just banished to the library. We are relevant across board because all the information the academic curriculum needs, we have access to all of them, and we can do information diagnosis to know the right set of information to give to different class of people that needs information from us, right? So it is very important. So librarians in pajamas is a new word is a new phrase I invented, and it speaks to what we are doing now, and it speaks to the situation that we are going through at the moment. So what are the things, the new realities for library school as I round up this presentation? What are the new realities for library school? Number one, introduction of a new module on emergency or crisis librarianship. So if you are here, you are a head of department of a library school, you teach library and information science in the classroom, this is a recommendation for you to take back to your management meeting. We need to include a module or a course on emergency librarianship because of what we are facing at the moment. Many of us didn't have the opportunity of learning anything about emergency or crisis librarianship in our different library schools, right? So we must go back to our universities, to speak to our management to actually include a module or a curriculum on emergency or crisis librarianship. Because the truth is, we are facing a lot of situations globally, and this will not be the end. We cannot predict what the future looks like, but we can, be ready for the future. We can be ready for the future. So, library schools, if you are head of department, you're a library and information science lecturer, maybe beyond this call, I'll be ready to provide my services to different universities in Africa to develop a curriculum on emergency and crisis librarianship. And I'm also ready to work with different library schools and academic libraries to deliver modules on emergencies and crisis librarianship. I'm working on a structure for that I can, work with other universities in Africa. We must be ready for this. We had crisis and emergency librarianship in America during the World War I and World War II. They were known as people, they were information hunters, information gatherers. And they went to war. Librarians went to war. But they didn't go to war with guns. They went to war with books, with knowledge. So that is our own weapon. It's not gun, it's books, it's knowledge. Number two, librarians will begin to serve more people online than any other time in history. Inclusion of remote service librarianship should be included in curriculums. The second recommendation I have for library schools is we can create a course on remote service librarianship. When we are training our serious librarians and reference librarians, we oftentimes don't teach them, how to provide remote services to our communities. It is now the time for us to do that, it is now the time for us to do that. And these are my 2 recommendations for library schools. I hope I've not taken a lot of your time, and I just wanted the presentation and the conversation to be something we will continue to think about and make changes in our different libraries, and for us to remain relevant even in this pandemic, and also for us to know that the times are changing and the future is becoming digital, and we cannot afford to be late. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I guess I'm ready for questions from all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this insightful and excellent presentation. I might say you are a great teacher and then also a good speaker as well. In fact, I must confess, I am not a librarian. I'm the host for the show, but I have really picked a lot of things, a lot of knowledge and important tips from your entire discussion. I believe that throughout the chat that is going on, everyone is expressing the joy, and then also the fact that you've been able to share highly relevant and practical lessons that can be adopted or adapted in universities during crisis. We'll move straight to the Q&A, but before we do so, we want to give the opportunity to about 2-3 people who would want to make a verbal presentation, maybe a verbal contribution. If you want to contribute verbally, just look on top of your interface. You will see a hand up, click on it, and we will give you the opportunity to make a verbal presentation. If you want to do so, kindly do that, and we'll enable the platform for you to speak as well. But whilst we are still waiting for participants to... Okay, Mr. Abed, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Just 2 minutes or 3. I'll give you 3 because you are the lead person. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just give a small contribution before others would come in. All right, so thank you so very much also for the presentation. It's been a very an in-depth presentation, covered a lot of areas. There is this quotation I have always liked to talk about, that you see, they say that faculty is very notorious to change, notoriously resistant to change. And that trying to change faculty is like trying to move a cemetery. You get no support from the occupants. In this case, I hope the librarians who are here now will not be like trying to move a cemetery, because there is a need for a lot of change in thinking and action, the way we have been working all along. Like you rightly said, students are all home now. How do they make use of the physical infrastructure? We need to engage them online. But how prepared are we, or the librarians, how are they prepared to make that change? How are they conversant with the social media platforms that are existing now? I used to ask a lot of the libraries, do you have a Facebook account for your library? Doesn't seem to work. Do you have a WhatsApp contact detail for people who are in need of support to work or contact you? It doesn't seem to be existent. So like you said, there's a lot of things the librarians can do now. If they are not relevant now in the pandemic, how relevant will they become when the pandemic is over? Already the faculty is not seeing them as being very useful to them. And students go to libraries with their tablets and are surfing the internet and not making use of the physical books anyway. So why don't we move into that environment where we can locate them and engage them? Why are we not making that effort so that we are more relevant to them in the pandemic season? By the time we come out of the pandemic, everybody knows that as for this librarian, when it was time for me to stay online and to learn, it was a source of information for my assignments, for my preparation towards exams, for my learning, whatever information I needed. So that we have now become relevant to them before we become, like I say, an endangered species. So thank you so very much. The other thing I want to add is that the listserv that was used to inform a lot of you, it's not supposed to be just a listserv, it's supposed to be a discussion thread. So the librarian information professional email address that came with the information about this webinar to you would continue to be active. Whatever information or whatever experiences you want to share, please post onto that list. People would be able to see it. We'll share experiences. We need to grow from here. We need to continue to engage each other, to support each other during this pandemic and beyond the pandemic. This new reality is not going to change. I'm sure beyond the pandemic, things are going to now be more of digital. So the digital inclusion is very necessary. Let's share our experiences. Let's continue to help each other to have a well-known place in the academic environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abednego Kolote, for that brief. Yeah, I think it's brief presentation. We would still want to take 2 or 3 verbal contributions to the discussion, but before we do so, let me go on to some of the comments and questions that we have in. And this is from Cecile Koulibaly, and I think his is just a submission. With this pandemic, I think it is time to adopt open access policies at institutional level and national levels, and I think I agree with you. Musa Isuta, pardon me if I'm not able to pronounce your name correctly. Infodemic and good crisis are key words you use. Please share a model that libraries can use, since all this new platform are bandwidth and power intensive. I think you can take that one, Mr. ADEPOJU.
Awesome question. And some of the talks I've given on an African platform like this, we're always coming back to the conversation around bandwidth and power, right? And I'm from Nigeria, I'm a Nigerian, and it breaks my heart that a country that is close to 60 years post-independence has not been able to conquer the problem of electricity, right? It's really heartbreaking, right? And when we talk about industrial revolution, the first industrial revolution was, I think, about rail networks. The second industrial revolution was agricultural equipment, and the third one, I guess, was electricity. And the fourth industrial revolution is about Internet of Things and big data and all. And in most countries in Africa, they have still not been able to conquer the first industrial revolution, let alone the fourth industrial revolution. It's so sad. And we're always coming back to the issue of bandwidth and power. But my response to this question on bandwidth and power in providing an online, only online platform to our community is that there's something called the rebellious power of technology. The technology is very, very rebellious. And as long as we're able to pass the policy at the university levels to move online, telecommunications companies will not have any choice than to beat down their prices. And the problem in most African countries is that our government have collected a lot of bribes and taxes from these telecommunications companies. And they don't have any choice than to hike the prices of whatever they are selling to us in terms of internet data. So we cannot do this alone, and that is why I called it an advocacy. We cannot do it alone. All the ministries of in charge of information technology and data regulation in our different countries are players in this. And it starts from us to be able to push our conversations and our advocacy to all these different platforms, right? So we may not be able to solve the problems on solar, even if we are subscribing to solar power to power our libraries. Some things cannot be powered with solar, right? So it is very sad that we are experiencing this in Africa, and this is why this conversation is not a conclusive conversation. We are just here this morning or this afternoon to have this conversation that ignites a passion in us and an uproar for us to go back and take actions, because most fine speeches and conversation and webinars like this ends up when we click leave meeting. But what do we do to move ahead from here and do something? And we start from advocacy. For internet data, we cannot do anything as libraries until we push advocacy to, first of all, drive correct policies that encourages the entire academic ecosystem to move online, to move some of our services online, and the telecommunications companies will not have any choice than to beat down their prices. And also to discourage our different African governments from corrupt way of collecting, because sometimes when these telcos are coming into our countries, they've gone through 10 different places where they have dropped money, and it's affecting the way they bill us when we pay. Some of them even lie to us that we are subscribing to 4G, but the internet can barely open an email, right? This is a policy issue that libraries can lead the conversation. And I believe that if we don't stop working and we keep having such conversations and taking actions one day at a time, we'll be able to reach a point where all these issues of power and bandwidth will be solved. And I will end my answer to that question by saying that the posterity depends on us. We have not inherited this land or this profession from our ancestors alone, but we have borrowed this profession from our children. And whatever we do today will determine what the future they will come and meet. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the wonderful submission. We have 3 people who have expressed interest.
The issue of the bandwidth. So, hello?
Yes, Mr. Bed, go ahead.
Hello? Yeah, just briefly to the issue of the internet connectivity thing. You see, Madam in her introduction spoke about the National Research and Education Networks that the AAU is pushing, advocating to support the internet bandwidth issues. Then she mentioned the regional bodies, the WACREN, the Ubuntu Net Alliance, and the ASREN. Now, these are bodies that the universities are supposed to be working with. They need to register with them. They need to push them to provide them with internet that is affordable. The issue is that the National Research and Education Networks are supposed to set up and run and make sure the educational institutions within each country it's working well and that they have internet connectivity and the necessary infrastructure to be able to provide services and support for the academic institutions. So beyond this, I would also want to urge all participants who are here, when they go back, please ask for information about your research. Nigeria is NGREN, Ghana is Garnet, Kenya is KNET, Uganda is WENU. They are all over. Every country has some national research and education network body. Please get to them. You can continue to lead the fight from there. Engage them. Help them to push on so they can get the necessary internet connectivity at very affordable prices for institutions to be able to continue to do the work we are doing. It's a good call, and we must all support that call so we can have internet for our users.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Bed. We would still want to take verbal contributions from our participants, and I can see Osman Imoro. Osman, I have enabled your microphone. Can you kindly make a presentation? Just 2 minutes. Thank you.
I guess you can move to the next person.
Okay. All right. let's take the next question whilst we still wait for Osman to get ready. This is coming from Evelyn O.A. Tete, and she's asking, what exactly is the language of library users? Could you kindly explain the language of library users?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. What I meant by that is that as the situations are changing currently, the needs of our users are also changing, right? And we must be able to speak their language. This language many of our undergraduates are speaking now is the language of social media. And we agree with me that many of them are consuming a lot of fallacious information on social media. And as librarians, we cannot just sit down and keep saying the social media space is a very dangerous place. What are we doing for people to get the right information on social media? Because we have not taken advantage of that platform. And that is what I'm saying I call the language of our users. Many of our undergraduates, as they speak, the language they know is social media. That is what seems to be keeping them busy. So you say when they go on Twitter, they are, there's a lot of trolls on Twitter, on Facebook. This is the thing they're doing there. What are we doing as librarians to go to them where they are and connect with them? Those people giving them all the misinformation and all the destructive information, they are also connecting with them. They went there to meet them. So we should also go there to meet with them and speak the language they want. And the language they want, per media, but the content we are giving them is the content of our libraries, the content of value proposition, and the content that gives them hope and the opportunity to continue learning even as they are at home. That's what I meant by the language of our users.
Thank you so much, our facilitator. Let's take the next question, and this is come from Kwame Kofi, and he's asking, what are we supposed to do as librarians if everything is closed due to COVID-19?
Good one. In my presentation, I said libraries are closed, but knowledge is not closed. You can lock down the physical libraries, but you cannot lock down my knowledge. You cannot lock down your knowledge. So if libraries are closed, and definitely libraries are closed, everything is closed as we speak. Everything is closed. And that is why we're having this conversation. So I guess that question, the presentation actually answers that question directly. If everything is closed, then internet is not closed. Our knowledge is not closed. Open access platforms are not closed. So we should use all the instrumentations of the things that are not closed to still serve our communities. If you close your university and you think it's not, then we should not be communicating with our students. It's very wrong. If everything is closed, the knowledge portrayer should not close. So there are different even if it's just to make a compendium of open access platforms where your students can always go to download things to read or to always just be in contact with them. That is the best way to go, even if everything is closed, right? So I think the presentation summarizes an answer for that question.
Great. This is coming from Prosper, and he's asking, how best can we advocate for reduced data in our countries where inflation is spiking? I think this has been answered. Digital distancing is a disease for sure we are suffering. For example, here in Zimbabwe, network service providers are actually reviewing their data upwards, and I think this is also answered, but the facilitator will make a point if there is. This is from Popola, and he's also saying that one challenge about implementing online library services is that many of the library heads and decision makers are not tech savvy and often disregard young ones. Any idea?
Yeah, very interesting question. I was given a presentation in Ghana last year, and I told the people in the room that there are two types of generation when it comes to technology. There's a technology adapted generation. So if you are 50 years and above as we speak, you are a technology adapted generation. And if you are like 50, maybe between 45 downward, you are a technology born generation. There's a level of you met probably the first 3 digital decades if you are 45 and below, right? So it is very important for us as professionals to understand these two classes that we are talking about: the technology born generation and the technology adapted generation. But the mistake the technology born generation, the mistake they've made is that they are not patient with the technology adapted generation in the way they present things to them. So most decision makers and maybe library heads as we speak are technology adapted generation people. And then it's always very hard for us to push innovative and creative things to them to implement, which is very understandable. But the truth is, with our advocacy for digital inclusion, the technology adapted generation also will begin to understand better what we are talking about. The language with which we communicate with them, sometimes they don't understand it. So this is for technology adapted generation. When you want to communicate with the technology born generation, if you want to communicate with the technology adapted generation, be patient, look for the right words to present to them. It's not all technology adapted generation that are not, that are not open to innovation, but many of them have the problem of understanding because of the way we present it to them, right? I agree with you. It's a very big challenge, right? But the truth is things are changing. I want to assure you that things are changing and people are getting more and more digitally literate, right? And that's one thing that we must also work on, the digital literacy of all the people that we work with in any way we can, right? So I agree. The technology adapted generation don't always understand, most times don't understand what the technology born generation is saying. But we must be patient in the way we present things to them. And things are changing. Very soon, the technology born generation are the ones that will take over leadership everywhere. Thank you.